as a newer franchise concept, there's an underestimate of the amount of business coaching that you need to do for your
Yes.
franchisees. And look, I did the same thing, right? I thought I was teaching my franchise owners primarily how to run a sports program. And I overlooked the importance of running a business. And then so there was a disconnect there until I quickly found out, oh my gosh, my franchisees have never run a business before, and they're asking really basic questions, even down to like the financials, and had never managed an income statement, didn't know what a balance sheet was, didn't know about hiring, and didn't know about how to really scale their business. They were operating their business day in and day out, and the big clue I got was that my franchisees would say, well, I can't expand because I can only be at one place at a time. And we knew right there that they weren't acting like the CEO of their business. They were so owner operated. So I don't fault anybody that is in the emerging space that's starting out, because we do the best we can, right, with the resources we have. And we think because we had this successful model that we can just replicate it, but we forget that the business coaching aspect of franchising is probably the number one thing that
Absolutely.
needs to be addressed immediately when you start franchising, is that you cannot overdo business coaching.
So most franchisors or emerging franchisors don't even know or don't even hire FBCs
Right.
until they're like 15, 20 locations, right? Franchisee business coaches. And so I definitely think that's a big, big missing sort of piece of the puzzle. But there are ways that you can also append that, right? So even if you don't have FPCs who are like constantly in touch with sort of owners, you need to empower owners in terms of resources and tools that they can at least use and browse on their own. There was this recent survey by AHOA. So that's the Hotel Owners Association.
Mm-hmm.
And they surveyed QSRs, hotels, retail franchisee. What they found was super interesting. About 72.6% owners said that if they could, they would leave the system next year if they could without a penalty,
Wow.
right? Which is a striking number. And these were mostly established brands. Now, why this disconnect? They have FBCs and stuff, but once you scale, and it is really important to see how human behavior has changed, right? So from 5 years ago to today, the way that we do work just on a day-to-day basis is completely changed. People like to search stuff. People like to sort of find things on their own, write down stuff, like using technology in every way possible, right? Like, let's take an example of sales. Now you're rolling a sequence on your CRM, automated emails are going on, scheduling is happening automatically. So the way that you were doing that earlier has changed a lot. But that has not changed in business coaching. So
Mm-hmm.
business coaching is still, I'll talk to you one on one. It'll seem like an interrogation and not like support, or I'll not seem like your friend. And then apart from this conversation that you have nothing else, right? I
Right.
think that's the most important resource. But young owners who are now increasingly coming into the ecosystem are used to searching things. Like, give them the resources. Like you said, if you cannot constantly be there, you don't have the resources to hire FPCs. Can you give them the right resources so they can look up how to do SEO? And they
Mm-hmm.
can look up how to, like, if I have a Facebook page, what can I do to sort of boost that? Can you give them the right information to, if I'm hiring somebody and they say that my shift is not working, how do I handle that situation? Even if you cannot hire people, you can build those resources. And as a franchisor, you've run your business, so you know all the challenges that are. Just create an FAQ of the basic challenges that you have, and you'll cover at least 50% of the questions that they have, even without talking to them, right? So there are these hacks and stuff that I often talk about. So instead of looking back at how does McDonald's do it, because they're not doing great either, right? Like we can see that in numbers. Think of it in terms of first principles. Like, what do I think this guy needs to operate the business? And obviously, I cannot be with him 24/7, but I can just record myself. Everybody has an iPhone. Just record yourself
Mm-hmm.
saying all of this. It'll get automatically transcribed. But can I give him the right resources, right? So that's sort of one track that I feel on FBCs. But definitely agree with your first point that this is one area that if Zors work on, they'll see the highest impact and the highest leverage
Yeah.
item maybe on their docket.
Yeah, you're not getting to royalty sufficient without a strong franchise business coaching team. Sure.
Absolutely.
So if I was a Delightree client as a franchisor, and I have a team of franchise business coaches, what are maybe some of the most popular tools that my business coaches are using when they're communicating with my franchisees?
So the first thing that any Zor starts to use on Delightree is create their system, right? So we took the same approach of what's important, first principles for a franchisee.
Mm-hmm.
So we forced them to create the system or think in terms of system, right? So which is what we call the knowledge base. So what we say is every resource that you have, that could be the user manual of your POS, that could be Excel sheets that you're using for reporting business metrics, that could be, again, something basic as a checklist, just put it on Delightree. So that's the first bit, which is now FBCs are going with the arms and ammunition to actually help owners. And even if they're not with the owners now have those arms and ammunitions that they can use. Second, once we have those arms and ammunitions, what we often recommend to FBCs, or at least what we see FBCs start to do pretty quickly, is from those arms and ammunitions, now they start to evolve them based on feedback, right? So you're using Delightree to send announcement, to send messages, to do support. So now owners have one single place where they can ask questions to you. But most importantly, now you can also see analytics and metrics of what are they searching? What are their main questions? What are they using, right? That now enables you to create more resources. So if you see that out of 10 locations, everybody is constantly searching how to comp a customer, then maybe you need like a quick refresher on your POS comping a customer, right? Something as simple as that. That down to finally, if you see that most people are facing problems, so I'm having this one-on-one with you as a owner, and I'm an FPC, and I see one of the problems that you face is your ratings are really low, and most of them are coming during rush hour in the afternoon, right? I have that as a data point. Why that happens is because it becomes a mess. The kitchen, the back stuff becomes a mess, right? Now, I know this is a problem. I could learn this. Now, can I add a resource? Can I create a checklist, which is between shifts, that make sure that the prep is done before time? And so my owner doesn't have to think of that solution, but as an FBC, I'm thinking, and I'm giving him the resource to implement that solution. So the owner is still implementing those resources, but now you're enabling and empowering him with the right resources. And that's what I think the role of a FBC is today. So instead of being a police inspector, instead of being somebody who's doing interrogations, your role is you're a partner, you're a consultant, you're somebody that they need or they want to talk to when they're facing a problem. And then in order to do that, you need to sort of think like that, right? And so these things become important. And then one final thing that we help them, FBCs do, which they do on a day-to-day basis, is instead of doing that 150-point checklist inspection that you do once a year, we enable them to do smaller inspections remotely more often. That don't feel like a sort of I'm going and trying to find a fault, but that feels like I'm trying to help, right? An example of that is, instead of going and checking are the bathrooms clean once a year, I would maybe randomly once a month send a task to whoever the staff is on duty, click a picture of the restroom. Something as simple as that, which is staff gets a notification, they go and click a picture of the restroom and it's done. That helps you, one, avoid shocks at one inspection that happens constantly. And second, gives your FPCs enough data. So when they're having that one-on-one, they now don't just, how you feeling about this, but they have, hey, I noticed this, and here's how I can help you. You're already going with a plan, right? And then obviously you can put that plan back onto Delightree and keep evolving that.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fumey, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.